filled day. There's a lot of stuff to get through, so I'm going to record this again. I brought a little mic so you can listen to me ramble while we go through this, but it should be useful for sort of going back through, because not everyone can follow along on their computers yet, and so this might be a thing that I do every week. We'll see, but hopefully this will be useful. But cool. So we have a lot to get through. So I'm gonna try to go. If I go too fast or you have a question, like raise your hand, stop me. If you're like, wait, what did you just do? What did you just click on? Like, I can go back and look at it. So, but cool. So we're just doing chapter 2. This sort of gets into a broad base of like neat things you can do with maps. So, yes.
What's the next? Is the next assignment 1-2 or is it in chapter 2?
Yeah, so the syllabus is a little wonky. So today it says today's homework is required is like the 2-1-2-2.
2, okay.
But that's actually due next week. That's yeah. So it's the language on there is not, I think, super clear. So like today 1-1 is due, and next week 2-1-2-2 is due, and then so just sort of leapfrog. Also, I wanted to. That's my email address. If you guys need to get in touch with me, a lot of people already have figured this out on their own. So I just wanted to make sure everyone had it here on the board. Okay. So what we're going to do today, I think we're doing chloroplath and, yeah, we're doing some displaying data on maps today, so this will be, I think, pretty interesting. So, this we want, yeah, neighborhoods. So, and like I said, I'm currently connected to my office computer right now, so if the connection messes up, then hopefully we will be able to reestablish it. So this book really likes us to do like hollow fill. So now there's no color in there. It's like invisible. It's not white. If we wanted white, we would actually go to here. It looks the same, but it's the difference of no color or an actual color. And we can change this so we get nice thicker lines. This was something that we missed last week. It was the last couple pages, but it's how to do labels. So I'll briefly just sort of walk through this. So you right click, go to properties, and I'm already here on labels. So what you can do is you can choose the field that you want to label. A lot of these data sets come with a lot of sort of data embedded in them, and a lot of those are names. So you can go in like this is borough name, county FIPS code, which will become a useful thing for us to sort of look at later in this course. But I think we're just going to stick with name for right now. And you can change the size. And to actually add the label, so if I went through and I do this and I hit OK, it doesn't do anything. And that's because you have to, importantly, go click this button here in the top left. I know that it's sort of far away, so you guys are you can't necessarily read everything, but this is as big as I can make it. So that's pretty busy. So what it wants us to do, bounce down to Lower Manhattan, and we can actually see, okay, this is what these labels look like. And it really, this is another thing too, bless you. It really likes to have these halos around names to sort of make them stand out so they don't get overlapped as easily. So you just go to the labels page, you go down to symbol. This is, again, not like the most straightforward process, but after you do it like 4 or 5 times, you'll be like, oh, okay, boom, boom, boom. So this is going to make, you might have to go back, look at the book, maybe go back and look at this video just to get into the habit. So you go down to Symbol, Edit Symbol, and then click on Mask. It's super straightforward, right? Not really. So we want it to be white. I think it wants us to have 5. And you can sort of see, like, if we can't, that doesn't actually help. But you can see maybe up here, again, it's really far away, but like, it sort of makes it just stand out from the neighborhood lines a little better than it would have otherwise. Okay, so this is important too. So now we don't see our neighborhood lines anymore. So what we want to do is actually make sure that these are stacked correctly. So it's like layers. If you've ever done any like photo editing, the top layer is the layer that is on top of everything else, and then it sort of creates this stack. So this is something to keep in mind. Also wants us to add water. So right now, like, this is like zoning land use, and this map would not be very useful because it just shows us that every part of the island, like of New York, has been zoned in some sense, but we don't know the difference between the zones. So this is where we can dig in and actually change some of that stuff. If we go to Symbology, and then categories, unique values, and again, we want to figure out what does each of these little parts actually do. We want to select the value field zone, hit all values. Nope, actually this is the wrong one. Disregard that. There we go, land use was the right one we want. And so then we can see if we just if we just click OK, but now we have an actually much more useful map. We can tell that there's these different parts are used for different things, right? And what those things are. Just so that we have this all set up. It does. There we go. It likes us to have everything labeled. So just wanted to add that back in. Okay. So right now, ArcGIS will just sort of add in random colors. So you can choose like your color ramp. Like we could do it, whole different way, like sets of shades. But in a lot of cases, you're going to want to set the color manually so that you're using a unified color scheme or something that you've chosen yourself. So you can just double click these colors and set it up. So right now, the book has you go through all this stuff. So it wants you to choose it. Like we go down and we want apple dust, which is, these all have neat names, right? Gray, 30%. And sort of choose all of these. I'm not going to go through and watch you guys, or make you guys watch me like find each color and change it individually. I just want to show the process. You just, so you can do it. You can do it from right here as well. But in the book, it has go commercial. We want to be rose quartz, etc. So I will do this one and then I will stop. 2-1. I guess this one right here. et cetera, et cetera. So I actually did this. Oh, this is the wrong map. Here we go. So I went through and did this all last week sometime, and so you guys didn't have to like watch me do it all. But so this is what the map would look like if you go and follow the book's instructions. With all things, it likes us to label. Wants us to label the zone. So now we get each of these little zones has been, you know, marked with whoever named it, whatever designation code it has. This is something interesting that you can do. Like it has, Esri has a lot of built-in different like specific color schemes. So different governmental organizations or institutions or people that make maps, they try to use the same color for a park or something like that. And so you can go in and you click the style reference, and you see it's got all these built-in color reference schemes. So all I did was add the civic scheme, and I can go down and find. So like, I mean, you know, rural, you know, RA05 rural agriculture or whatever. So you could, all these things are sort of baked in based on like what you're doing. But here in our case, we just want park and open space. That's something that you guys, there's not many applications that you'll need for this class, but like it is something to just have the general knowledge of. And I do want, I generally like to leave these unclicked though, just because then, you know, I get my basic colors here that I might want to use. So it's sort of personal preference, whatever you guys prefer. Okay, so this wants us to add some facilities. That's what we want. And again, with the same issue with the zoning map. So we just know that all of these are some sort of facility. We don't know what they are, so we want to go in and sort of change what we're looking at. To do this, we go over to Symbology again. Categories. Wait, am I ahead of myself actually? Oh yeah. So actually what we want to do before we go over to Symbology is go over to this definition query. Go into the query builder, and we'll see here we have all the different variable types that are caught under facilities. And some of these will sort of let us choose which specific facilities we want. And to actually figure out what all these are without, you know, the book sort of pre-tells us exactly what we want to go look for. But if you have a data set that you've sort of just merged into your map, most data sets come with something called a codebook. You guys used codebooks before, probably in 100 and in other classes. So your codebook will have the sort of numbers, you know, like, okay, in this case, soup kitchens are 4903. And your codebook would have that information. And in some cases, the data set might be labeled, so you could actually go into the data set itself and sort of see what that thing is. So I think what we want is, facility T. So all we do, what we're going to be doing is just sort of, you could type this all in manually. To too, like if you knew exactly what you were looking for. But all we're going to do, we can just double click and it adds this query down to the bottom. Again, I'm sorry, it's not as big as we'd like, but and we're going to go equal, and then so in this case, like, I know the exact numbers I want to go to, but if we click this get unique values, we'll see all the different options we could actually choose from. So this is useful if, especially if it's a string variable and it's actually labeled, like if it said soup kitchen or food pantry or something like that, then that would be useful. But I think in this case we want 4901, 4902, and 4903. And we're just going to set up some logic operators. So in this case, we want to get all three of them. And so we want to capture 4901 or 4902. So here I'm just going to copy and paste, type or, and paste again, and change these manually. And then that should get what we want. And we hit OK, and I may have borked it. Okay, let's see. Sometimes this variable needs brackets around it. Okay. Interesting. What? All right, live debugging. Okay, I just figured out what my issue was, so. So this is actually right. I just got antsy. I didn't actually tell it to draw the things on the board. So after you do this, if you don't get an error, then you should be okay, if I remember correctly. So now I can go back over here. So like we did before when we went to categories and we wanted to add stuff to the map, we just click add all values. Okay. Oh, so I'm adding from the wrong thing. So this is why you have to go slow, and hopefully you guys will be learning from my mistakes as well. So what we're going to go down is select this value here, and then add all of these to our map. So now we actually have our things on our map, which is what we want. And it wants us to go here, and we can change these things. So I think it wants the food pantry to be a square, size 12. across. And the circle. Okay, so in this case, it wants us to unselect this. Some cases, if you see objects on your map that you weren't expecting, so like I just changed those three objects, and so I should have my 3 different shapes. But if you see extra dots on your map, it could be because it's drawing in these other values that it has captured. So if our query didn't actually work correctly, it could be adding in all these different objects to our map that we don't want to be there. So if you do see those, you can go unselect this value here. Okay, so that should get us there. And with all things, it would like us to label it. So should get pretty good at this this thing. So in this case, I think facility in is probably means facility name of facility. Wants 6 green with a. Again, we're going to go add a mask. We're going to symbol, edit symbol, mask, and leave a white. Yeah, white halo. We want. Oh. So again, if you don't see your things on the map, make sure you go select this button up here. And now, okay, so my mask seems to not have. You actually have to select the option. That's why. Okay, so now we have our things here on the board. We can also go and just add Manhattan streets. % gray. Okay, so our map's getting a little busy, as you can see. So say we want to add names to the roads. It's going to add a lot more things to our map. So what we can do is actually go and shoot. Where is this? It's under. Okay, so it's here, symbol. Oh, placement properties stuff. And what we want to do is go to conflict detection. So say we're going to add in our street names, but to make sure that they don't sort of overlap all of the actual labels, the bigger labels that we're more concerned with, we go to conflict detection, and we want the label weight to be low. And that way it prioritizes other labels over this. So if we add that to our map, we should get more. It's going to have to think here. So now we have a really messy map. So a map like this is probably actually more useful zoomed in on something. And so here we go. If we do zoom in, okay, this map is way more useful. we can actually see the things that we're interested in, and so which in this case is zoning and different facilities. So, and the map or the roads are nice to have for reference points. So, again, that's a lot to throw at you just for like 2-1, but hopefully it sort of gives you an idea of like where to go through. And again, the book is really easy to sort of step back through if you have questions. Like when you get to the homework and you're like, shoot, I don't remember how to do that. That's why the tutorials are here. So you've seen it once, now you can go back and you can find it again in the book, and it's not that hard. It shouldn't be that hard because you've already seen it once. So any questions at this point? Yeah.
Where are the data sets?
So we're pulling from, I'll go to add here. We're pulling from this new, like, NYC. It's called a geodatabase. So
Okay.
essentially, geodatabases are folders. They're like, it's a special type of data set, essentially. It's a data set that contains a bunch of different data. So here, sort of like, if we want to think conceptually, like, we have, like our normal data set that we're used to, which is like usually a 2x2 Excel sheet grid. You could open it up and sort of, there's cells of data. But what GIS does is takes this type of data and joins it with maps, like mapping data. And so it ties, okay, this cell goes to, this part of the map, and it combines it into a, I can't draw an arrow, holy cow. It combines it into essentially a map database, so that you could take data and combine it with a shape. These are called shape files.
Yeah.
They're the polygons, and then you can display it as something interesting.
Yeah, I get that, but when we downloaded our GIS, is it already on our computer, or do we have to get this file from Elms or the internet?
So I sent out a message, I think. Yeah, so we had the GIS installation download, and so you've installed it, but that doesn't have the data. Okay. There's a separate way to download the data, and so if you just go back and you look at it's been in I think 3 different messages, so you should just be able to go find it and click it. Yeah. Okay. So you want to know physically where they were, not what.
Yeah,
okay.
no,
Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood
I get
that.
the idea of GIS,
Yeah.
but, I just want to know where I'm gonna find
You-
this data set.
Yeah. It is accessible to you.
Okay.
Yeah. You should be able to find it. So, okay. Any other questions? All right. So now, that's 2-3 begin. It'd be nice if I could. So this is the right thing. Okay, so this is 2-2, and we'll be sort of working with this map for most of the rest of this chapter. But so what we want to do, we want to look at 48 contiguous, and we want to add more data to it. So right now we did so you guys remember the difference between categorical data and different types of data sets, right? So the categorical data we just looked at was different zones. So you are commercial or you're not. You are housing or you're not. But we can also display sort of continuous data points. So housing, number of vacant houses, or number of occupied houses, or the available housing stock of the country. And those are numbers that are measured in continuous numbers. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to n number vacant houses in a county. And so we can also display that kind of data on a map. And so like we did before, obviously we right click and go to properties like we do with most things. Go to Symbology, and before we went to categorical, right? But we're going to go down to quantities. And from here we can display different things on our map. So we have value here. I think we want vacant, but we don't want vacant 2000. We want just vacant. And we'll just get, so we can draw out the number. So these are vacant, I think just raw number vacant houses. So here you can see like 11 to 5,000 vacant units, 5,000 to 17,000, etc. It goes all the way up to like 2 million, I think. It's it's a high number. But yeah, so we can look at the data like this. But does it want us to do yeah, okay. So right now what it's doing is it sort of defaults to displaying the data in something called natural breaks or Jenks, which is just sort of it's an algorithm that looks at clustering and tries to create nice different differentiations between the data. Which is fine, but we'll almost never do this. So like one of the first things that you'll do when you display data is you will select your value and you'll go over here and click classify. And something we will often do is quantiles. Just sort of splitting the data by quantile is a really standard way. I think we've all been doing it for a long time. So this is going to change the way our map looks. Okay. So it changes the way our map looks, but we're using data in a way that is more in line with sort of traditionally how I think we would how we would sort of understand or use data. But right now, so 11.0000 to 679.0000, it's not a very useful way of displaying our numbers. So what we can do is, in this area, right-click label, go to Format Label, and we can get rid of significant digits here, or decimal places. So in this case, we're working with nice round numbers. We can go all the way down to 0, and it makes this area just look a lot nicer. I wonder if oops. Okay, it makes it a little bigger, but it's still not huge. But and another thing that is nice is in this area we can get rid of the digits, but we can also show thousands separators. It just sort of makes it look nicer. We can better figure out that this number is actually 200,000. Not 2 million. Yada yada. Anything else? Okay. We also have point data here, so we have the U.S. states, and we can do similar things with that. We can make sort of different sized objects based on population. So if we go to pop 7 here. Again, we're going to want to not use Jenks, but we're going to use quantiles. And our label formats should have carried over. Yeah, that looks right. We want to show 1,000 separators. And here we get, when it finishes drawing, oh no. Whoops. So what you want to do actually is, so what I have done here is, and I'll change a color just so that you guys can see the mistake I made. We're now displaying point data. The darker green a color is, the higher the population is. Which really the distance that you guys are away from the screen, it probably is not even it's just not useful. So what you want to do is actually go to graduated symbols, and likes to use Mars red, and yes, our format looks good. We're using quantiles. Okay, so this should actually give us what we want, and so we're going to see, yeah, places like New York, LA, or LA. We're going to see different city sizes, which is what we want. But does it want us to do this first? I think this is actually easier to see if we do this. But as you can see, so the lower bound of this is 800,000, and well, you can't see. So the largest object on the map is from 800,000 to 8 million. That's probably not the most useful thing here, right? Because you can think there's some significant outliers in that data set, like New York, LA, places like that. But like Detroit and Charlotte and different places like that, they're just about as big, like they're showing up as the same size as New York, when we know that those cities are probably significantly different. So what we can do is we can go in and set our own sizes here. Okay, and we can, oh yeah. So we do this by going to our classify button again and switch over to manual. And then we can change things. So here I'm going to change this to 4 million. I'm going to change this to 2 million. This to 1 million. And this to 500,000. Okay, and so that should change the way our data is broken up. And here, before we draw the map, we can actually change our labels. So here, anything that is this label is 500,000 or below, and this is 4 million or greater, just so that we can have our nice thing. So this should change our map. Hopefully pretty significantly, so we can actually, yeah, so now there's actually way more interesting variation and variation that's actually useful to us. And so we can see here, okay, we do have New York. New York is showing up as very, very large. Chicago is showing up as very large. Yeah, LA. So, but places like Charlotte, Jacksonville, Portland are more, it just sort of reflects what our understanding, I think, of the sizes of those cities. Like Portland is different from New York, like in terms of size by a lot, right? And so our map hopefully should display something like that. So changing stuff manually can be really useful. Again, we can do it. Wants us to do this with this one, so I'll just run through it really quick. Set to 6 in manual, and it likes, yeah. So I'm just changing these numbers based on what the book says. So. And 96,000. And again, this should change our thing. So if we want to change this to 6,000. And this changes again. So like here, most of the country is going to be 6,000 below, or between 6,000 and 12,000, and then there's some interesting sort of hotspots of vacant housing stock sitting around the country. And so changing, sort of understanding your data, like with anything that you're like working with statistics, is important because it's going to help you display sort of more accurate or more useful parts of your data. One thing you can do, you can sort of click these and change them. So it wants us to change this to vacant housing by county. Okay, so we've looked at vacant housing. So we put a lot of work into sort of setting these different the different bounds between the data. So if we wanted to look at like available housing stock or occupied housing stock, but we didn't want to go through and have to do the exact same thing that we just did, we can do that. So we can right-click this and click Save as Layer File. And what this will do is it sort of saves all our settings and lets us apply it to a different part of the data. So we could apply it to, we're going to apply it to, I think, available housing stock and used housing stock. So this is where we are. Yep, we're going to save that layer file, and we are going to add some more data. So we want United States, and we want U.S. counties. You'll get a lot of these warnings. Again, ignore. You can ignore them. And so now that we have our counties here, I should redraw though, because there we go. We can go to properties, and in Symbology, again, we could start going through and do the same process again, or we can click actually this import button up here and find our layer file. And if we click add, it'll import all of our settings. And in this case, we don't have to use vacant. We can do, I think it wants us to do like occupied. Should save all of our things here, boom. And so now we have these two maps here, but they're on top of each other, right? So what you can do is, we did this last week, you can turn them on and off. So here we want to look at occupied housing by county. So we turned off the other layer, and we get a different map, as we might expect. At least I think. Oh, hold on. I'm actually using the wrong data set. We want to use this data set. Crap. Okay, so I'm going to redo this. We're going to remove. And we're going to add data again. States, U.S. counties, yeah. Properties, import. Find your layer file. Okay, and then actually select the correct variable that you want, which is owner OOC, and that gives us what we want. So, and again, it wants us to, it says your turn. It wants you to add renter occupied, which you can do. Or pretty sure, yeah. I went ahead and did this already so that you don't, I'm not going to run, I don't have to run through it again. And here now we have all three. We have vacant, owner occupied, and this should actually say renter occupied. I'm going to save that. And so then we have all of our maps and we're ready to roll into 2.4 at this point. I know this can be a little monotonous, but zoning out is going to be fine. I understand, but I just want. But it's again, I just sort of have to like crash through all this stuff because it's just a lot. It's going to be a lot of information very quickly. So thank you for your patience. I know this is probably not the most interesting thing, but like it is actually fairly rewarding after you get through and you're like, wow, I can make some really cool things. So again, that's why we're recording it. So if you need to go back and look at it, I totally understand. Cool. So we're going to do, again, color is really important on maps. I know that can sort of seem like, elementary school teacher having you like color maps in and stuff like that, but like it actually is an important part of maps, and like having bad color on a map can sort of ruin what you're trying to do. So understanding how to manipulate color on these maps is really important. So what we can do is, so we've looked at the color ramps, right? We can actually go and create our own color ramp. We don't just have to use these that are here. So you just right-click, go to Properties, and you choose your starting color and your ending color. So we want to start with white, and then end with, I think, dark navy. And we get something that looks like this. But the book also wants you to be able to sort of change this more. So you can go into here and sort of the more color options gives you. I know this is tiny, but gives you something that you can change stuff. So I think it's this 5% is what it wants. Yeah, 5%. So you can sort of desaturate the different colors here. So I'm just going to roll through this really quick. Like 20%. %. $60. Okay, and so now we get a bit more contrast than we did before. So now the like highest category really sort of pops if that's like what we're interested in showing, these sort of concentrations of really high density or really high pockets of whatever variable we're interested in. So you can do that pretty quickly. Okay. So now we want to we're going to go ahead and turn some of these off. Turn this one off, turn this one back on. And so right now we've just done like raw numbers, so like the number of vacant houses, the number of occupied houses. All right, again, sometimes it'll stop drawing, and so you just have to move it again so it'll keep drawing. There's a little world here in the bottom corner, so okay, that went really quick. So right here, if you don't see that world but your map isn't finished, then you need to reload it. Something you'll run into. But so right now we've only seen like number of houses on the map, but we can sort of normalize a lot of variables. So we could do number of houses that are vacant based on the number of total houses in the area. And that would be, we can create percentages instead of just sort of raw count data. So it wants us to rename this one to percent vacant housing by county. And wants us Symbology. HSE units. Nope. Oh, right there. Yeah. So here we're dividing the number of vacant houses by the total number of houses in an area. That way, because obviously, like, so if we think about why we might do that, you know, the places that are dark here are LA, parts of Miami-Dade. If we zoomed in on New York, you would see it's dark. It's urban areas, right? And so of course urban areas are going to have more vacant houses because they just have more houses, right? So what if we want to compare data across counties? Then one way we could do that is look at the number of vacant houses divided by the total number of houses in an area, and then we've normalized it. We can compare. We can compare across counties. So that's why we're going to go down now. Actually, I have to find this again. So we divide it by housing units. It wants us to use 5 and yeah. Here we're just going to divide it by equal intervals. Again, we could do it a whole host of ways, and it would be fine. So this is going to draw us a different map. Okay, so now we see there are different places are now sort of hotbeds. Sort of this northern Michigan, Wisconsin, middle of Idaho. Really, it didn't register on the last map. So you can sort of see, okay, this tells a different story than we were looking at before. But as you maybe can or can't see, these are in decimal form. And so if we want to actually display them in percentages, which we would want to on an actual map, we can go and we can futz around with the thing. So we've been using numeric. We can click over under percentage, and there are two options. The first one is this number is already a percentage. Please put a % sign next to it. So like if the data was formatted in a way where if we divided them, it gave us whole numbers or I guess actually above 1 integers, then we could just do this and it would tack on a percentage. But in our case, it's a fraction. So we click the second one, and so that way it'll turn our fraction into percentage. And we can go into the numeric options and sort of change our digits. So if we go down to, we got 1 here, so we're only showing 1 digit place. And we click OK. All right, so now we have percentages. So we're 3% to 18%, 18% to 32%, stuff like that. And so that is useful. Okay. So another way you can sort of, like, we added data before and we used that layer file. You can also just sort of copy whole sections of your board here and paste them. So now we have 2 of the same thing. And it carries over everything. So that's another quick way if you want to, duplicate something and change it. You can do that. So now we can do vacant housing density. So you can normalize things in different ways. So this is, actually I want this down here so we can see the states. You can divide it by the number of total houses you have available, or you could do it by sort of a square distance. And this would give us an actual like density map, like density in terms of area on like actual on the ground. So this Alland 10 is I believe a census designation that I think it's 10 square meters. I think it tells us, or maybe it's just square meters. It's actually just, so this will divide a number of vacant houses by the square meterage of the country, and this will give us, or of the county, and this will give us another way of sort of looking at our data. So we want, yeah, it doesn't have us change it from Jenks, but we could if we wanted to. So this will again change our map. And we see most of the country is white because a lot of these places, especially like out in the middle of here, it's just like way more wide open space than there are houses, and so like you get this huge disparity. But one thing we can think about, we can go into cities, like, so this might be, while this might not give us interesting data on the country as a whole, we might be interested in like sort of like different urban sectors of a city and how they're doing based on the density of vacant houses, et cetera. So here, this is New York. We can bounce over to LA, and again, LA is not actually registering very high, and that's because, as you can see, LA County, or the bounds of LA are way bigger than New York, right? And I think we understand that intuitively. Like, New York is super dense. LA is spread out and has lots of cars. Like you have to drive everywhere, and so that's things we can think about. So we could click around and we could look at, okay, San Francisco, maybe that makes sense because it's just San Francisco's on the tip of this, so it's a little more dense. We could go to Chicago, gives us a different thing. Okay, maybe in between LA and New York, it's still a dense city, right? I think we think of it still as a dense city, but so these are different ways that you can sort of play around with normalizing your data, visualizing it, and it's sort of based on what you're interested in, right? So are you interested in comparing all the counties in the country to each other? Then probably don't use square meterage, right? Or are you interested in comparing cities to each other? Okay, then maybe a square meterage density plot is more sort of what you want. Okay, so now I think we want to open to 6. Questions at this point? A lot flown through a lot of things, but quick access maps. We want to 6. Nope, don't save. Okay, so we've mostly been working with point data and chloroplath maps. The chloroplath maps are like filling the area of an object with a certain color to show a different change in data, right? We can also show different things we can show density with points, right? And so what we want to do is, this is a U.S. population thing we've put on here. So we want quantities. We want population, not 2000, pop 2010. and we go down to dot density, actually. So this is, so we've done graduated colors. So this would be our chloroplath. This is our graduated symbols, and then we can also do a dot density plot. So let's see, we still want pop 10. It really likes us to have this Mars red color. It's his favorite. Okay, and so right now dot value is, I believe, 1 dot equals 70,000 people, which is pretty big, so maybe we want to do 5,000 people. And we click OK, and it should draw us a pretty interesting map. And so then this gives us a different view. It's going to take a while. This gives us a different view than we were looking at before, right? Where every county got a color, regardless of sort of what its value was. So like it could have had a value of 11 to 6,000, right? That's a pretty wide range. And so this gives us an idea of, okay, where are actually the population centers located in the U.S. And where are they not? So I mean, we can go around and we can mess with the different dot densities. So if we wanted to do 10,000, it's going to show us a different map. Oh. Did that not work? Okay, you got to click off of it for it to work. Okay, so this shows a little sparser plot to give us an even better idea of where populations are concentrated. And you can sort of see this sort of is in line with, I think, what we might imagine, right? So this is just a different way that we can display our data. We're going to skip 2.7 for now, just because we don't use it a whole lot in this class, but it's still it's a useful thing to know, especially there's a lot of really interesting applications that you can do with fishnet maps. And a fishnet map is essentially dividing an area up into just equal squares, and then you can measure different things that are captured in there. And so, like one application that some of my colleagues have done in IR is trying to understand, like we don't have great resource or GDP data for a lot of either failed states, like trying to understand, well, where do rebels have like concentrations of power, because they're not going to give us that information. They're not actual governments that are sort of releasing data to sort of to give us their GDP. So what can we do? Well, we can look at maybe light density, and so you can look at a map of the world at night and see where there are density, like light density across the country, to get an idea of where their different resources are concentrated. And so that gives you an idea of sort of how rebel groups might be forming and moving and allocating resources in a way that you would never be able to, you just couldn't go in and figure that out otherwise. And so, and the way that you would do that is you take the country and divide it up into chunks, and then measure the lumens of light based on sort of satellite data. So fishnet data, or fishnet maps, are really useful and can be really useful. And I'll probably make a supplemental video just sort of running through how to do them and upload that, so it's useful to you. Like, so if you guys want to go back and look at it. Does this class end at 10:15 or 10:30? 10:15. Okay, so that's probably good. So I move on from that really quick. The last part of this, is it 10:30?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, actually, I was starting to look this up. Oh, it is 10:30. Okay. Well, in that case, we might get out. We might still get out a little early because we just have the one last thing to do. So, but so for the fishnet maps, again, I'll try to make something if you guys are interested in how to do those. But you don't need to know them for your homework, so don't worry about it. Okay. So we want to start a new map for this last section. And what we want to do, so I believe we want New York. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing it wrong. So you can see, like I was just doing, you can go and you can add individual data and build maps that way. But you can also sort of create packages. So I think we want new group layer, I believe is what we want. Yeah, new group layer. And we're going to call it, we're not going to call it anything. It's just our new group layer. We go to properties, and we get a different property screen. So we've not seen this yet. And we're going to click group. And then we can add data all at once into a nice package. And then we can save it and export it, and it's a really easy way of sharing data. So we want fire. Let's see, fire companies. What do we want? Oh, it does want us to name it. It's yeah, and then NYC Firehouse. It wants us to name and add a description, because if you were going to share this with someone, you would sort of want to label stuff so that they had a general idea of what you're doing. So, but you can go in, you go to click group and click add, and then you can start adding a bunch of different data all at once. And so we want boroughs, facilities, fire companies, and water. Boroughs and facilities. Okay, and so I just sort of added them at random, but obviously, like you can order them. So when they come out, we want water on the bottom, and then we probably want boroughs. Nope, we want boroughs on top. Fire companies and then facilities. Okay. And boom, it adds all that stuff like on the go. So if we want to go ahead and change some of our stuff, we want hollow. Okay, there we go. So we can start seeing things. It's pretty dense. Okay, so then we want to make sure the boroughs are outlined. So we, set this to 1.5. Yeah, again, it likes us to label everything, so we'll run through and do this really quick. Whoops. Symbol, edit symbol, mask, halo. Okay, so then we have our boroughs set up. Okay. We want to set up a query. Whoops. Wrong one. So we want, again, we're going to do what we did with facilities before. Go to definition query, query builder, and facility type equals, and in this case 2101 is what we're going to choose. Okay, so this only shows, now that I have selected the type, it's only showing firehouses is what it's showing. So these districts that we have are fire districts, and then we have firehouses placed inside the fire districts. So now we can rename this firehouses. Whoops, wrong one again. Oh, that's a bit big. Bad. Okay. So we're going to go to categories on the fire. We're going to go to fire companies, and we're going to change the sort of way the fire districts are, or what data we're showing in the fire districts. And we're going to do pop. We want graduated colors, sorry, quantities. Pop, graduated colors. Yep. Again, we're always going to try to display stuff in ways that make more sense. So we're going to do quantiles. We're going to format our labels so that they show thousands. And so now we have our population map broken down into quantiles under here, so we can sort of see where different population centers are across the city. Okay, so this gets us our map set up. And if we want to more easily share this with people, we have this whole layer right here, right? This New York City fire. We go to create layer package, and we're going to yeah. Okay, and we want to change sort of where it goes, where it saves, so that way we know where it is. I'm going to set up, and we're going to go to chapter 2 and save it there. You can sort of add, so you have to type a summary. So this is, in NY firehouses and population map. We're going to tag it with NYC fire. And stuff like that. We're not going to add any additional files. We're just going to click share. And it should package up sort of everything that we just did. And then that lets us sort of, we could post that on to Esri's website or onto our own website or something like that if we wanted an easy way of sharing sort of maps that we did. So it says, successfully created this package. And that's just sort of an easy way of containing sort of all of our work into an easy way, like an easy container. Cool. All right, I'm going to